Hello, everyone. This is Marty Gerenser. I'm the manager of the Good Food Network along with the folks at Wallace Center. This is the 4th webinar we posted this year, along with partners, different partners that you can look at previous webinars, as Jeff mentioned, on our website, ngfn.org. And today's webinar with our partners and good friends from USDA will be recorded as well. We noticed that there are a lot of new folks on the call today, attending this call, and so we wanted to take just a minute to talk to you a little bit, explain a little bit to you about the Wallace Center and the Good Food Network, and then we'll move right on into the cluster call. The Wallace Center is a subsidiary of Winrock International, based in Arlington, Virginia, with offices in Little Rock, Arkansas. We work nationally, helping small and medium-sized growers with an extra emphasis on those that are socially disadvantaged connect into the food system. So when you see scaling up, what we mean by that is the Wallace Center and the Good Food Network is focused on those growers that want to move beyond farmers markets or CSAs and work with regional grocers, for instance, work with food service distributors, and institutions. It's for those growers interested in moving toward a volume opportunity to keep their farm operations or their co-ops, their aggregation units viable. So that's the emphasis of where the Wallace Center lives, and that's certainly the work of the Good Food Network. The Good Food Network is comprised of growers, certainly small and medium-sized growers, a lot of different NGOs, non-governmental organizations that help growers connect to new markets, retailers, food service distributors, some of who are on the call today, have been good partners in helping us figure out this new food system in a way that keeps the small and medium-sized growers a part of this system through an initiative we call values-based value chain approach, meaning that everyone in the supply chain is treated fairly and equally. For more information about good food, scaling up, the Good Food Network, any of the things that we've just talked about, go to ngfn.org and also sign yourself up to be part of the e-newsletter and future webinars. And with any specific questions, you can always send those over to contact@ngfn.org. We'd like to give a special thanks to Jim Barham from USDA and Jeff Farbman and Beth Head from the Wallace Center. They've spent an awful lot of time coordinating this effort. We have a lot of friends from USDA who agreed to be on the call today in the midst of an extremely busy week, and we thank them as well.
Okay, Carmen, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me. My name is Carmen Humphrey. I'm the branch chief for the Marketing Grants and Technical Services branch of the Agricultural Marketing Services Transportation and Marketing Programs. We have a very, very long name. So most people just know us by the Farmers Market Promotion Program, grant program under AMS. So if you have any questions regarding the grant, I'll go into the details about that later. Please, by all means, send those to me.
Good afternoon. This is Rob Hedberg. I'm the director of the Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, known as SARE. And if it's appropriate now, I'll talk more about the program, or do you want me to get into those details at a later point?
No, I think dive right in.
Okay. Well, first of all, I do want to thank Jeff for all of his diligence in getting this organized this afternoon, and the Wallace Center at Winrock for the foresight of putting this together. I wanted to talk about the SARE program, grant opportunities, with my focus on the types of grants and how to apply. But before doing so, I would be remiss if I didn't also point out the publications that we have available on our website, which is www.sare.org. And those publications have synthesized and highlighted the findings of about 4,000 projects we've performed and supported over the past 20 years. In addition to our publications, a very rich source of information for people would be information on the specific projects that we have performed, and these are found on our website under project reports. And if you're thinking of a specific project or a research and education project that you'd like to perform, chances are someone may have already done something similar, and you could learn a lot from what has been reported in our projects reports database. In terms of our grants, I want to start off by saying that we really focus on funding research, education, and outreach and extension activities, and that we administer all of our grants through our 4 regions, and that be the South, the Northeast, the North Central region, and the Western region. And so all of your applications for grants through our program do have to be submitted to the appropriate region and in response to a specific call for proposals. And once I've given you a 20,000-foot overview, the more specific questions you might have might best be directed to the regional offices for detailed response. We do offer a variety of grant types. We have research and education grants, which are generally led by scientists. We have partnership grants, which are generally led by agricultural professionals, whether they be an extension or natural resource conservation service or other agricultural professionals, with an on-farm component to the research. We do have producer-led grants, so farmers and ranchers who have a topic that they would like to investigate, we can support them taking a risk on a project or investigating a research topic of their interest. We have professional development grants in support of training agricultural professionals, graduate student grants, and finally sustainable community innovation grants, which are intended to connect the sustainable ag research and the rural development activities within USDA. So in summary, the final thing that I want to stress is that our grants are competitive, and in submitting a grant, that it will be compared and ranked against other grants that are submitted in response to a call for proposals. Thank you.
I'm Debra Tropp, branch chief of the Farmers Market and Direct Farm Marketing Research Branch of USDA's Agricultural Marketing Service, and a colleague to Carmen Humphrey that you've heard from already. And I am delighted to be moderating this webinar, especially during this week. It could not be a more fortuitous occasion to be talking about how can USDA converse with the field about funding opportunities to make things happen regarding local and regional food. I'm quite sure that the vast majority of you are very aware of the rollout this week for Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, that Deputy Secretary Merrigan is overseeing. I'm very proud to be part of the task force that she has assembled through every agency in the department to work on local and regional food issues and to see what we can do both in terms of technical assistance and providing the right kind of financial assistance so that we can really make a difference where it counts on the ground. So I think I won't belabor any further with our technical difficulties here. Let's go right to the chase. I'd like to introduce Janice Digmont, who is the staff officer for AMS's Federal State Marketing Improvement Program, a matching grant program between states and the federal government, and I'll let her give a brief overview of what that means.
Thank you, Debbie. Federal State Marketing Improvement Program, otherwise known as FSMIP, is a program to assist states to conduct research to explore new and innovative approaches to marketing food and agricultural products and to improve the efficiency and performance of the marketing system. Now, FSMIP is an old program that was authorized under the Agricultural Marketing Act of 1946, so it's been around for some time. The annual appropriation for it is generally about $1.3 million. We fund about 25 projects a year, and the projects go from 1 to 2 years duration. A one-to-one match is required. Eligible entities for this program include state departments of agriculture, state agricultural experiment stations, and other similar or appropriate state agencies, such as state departments of forestry and state departments of natural resources. The FSMIP umbrella is very broad in terms of the eligible agricultural commodities. We cover livestock and livestock products, food and feed crops, fish and shellfish, horticulture, viticulture, apiary and forest products, as well as processed and manufactured products. The types of proposals that we seek under FSMIP are proposals that deal with barriers, challenges, or opportunities manifesting at any stage in the marketing chain, including direct wholesale or retail. We also entertain proposals that involve small, medium, or even large-scale agricultural entities, but the proposal should potentially benefit multiple producers or agribusinesses. Proprietary proposals that benefit only one business or individual will not be considered under FSMIP. Proposals that address issues of importance at the state, multi-state, or national level are appropriate for FSMIP. FSMIP also seeks unique proposals on a smaller scale that may serve as pilot projects or case studies useful as models for others. Of particular interest are proposals that reflect a collaborative approach between the states, academia, the farm sector, and other appropriate entities and stakeholders. So those of you who don't represent one of those eligible entities are still eligible to participate in the program as partners, and I'm going to give you a few examples in just a moment about some projects that we funded in 2009, and you'll see the importance of partnerships in those. Recent themes of the proposals that have come in from FSMIP include agritourism, aquaculture, ethnic marketing, consumer demand, and that is surveys and focus groups to try to find out what consumers want and need, value-added specialty and processed products, quality assurance, food safety, identity preservation, and state promotion programs. In 2009, we received 62 proposals from 39 states and territories requesting $3.6 million. We ended up funding 23 proposals from 19 states, and the average grant award was $58,000. Just to give you some quick examples of some projects that we funded in 2009 that I think might be relevant to this audience, we awarded a grant to the Colorado State Department of Agriculture in cooperation with Colorado State University and the Colorado Farmers Market Association to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of Colorado Market Maker as a tool for restaurant, food, and wine buyers seeking locally grown agricultural products and for consumers seeking farmers markets and agritourism destinations. We funded a project with Purdue University to assess the demand and market requirements for fresh fish by surveying buyers at ethnic markets, traditional meat and fish shops, and independent grocery stores. We funded a project with the Maine Department of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Resources in cooperation with Maine Vegetable and Small Fruit Growers Association, the Heart of Maine RC&D, the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Service, and other partners to develop a business plan and financial model for a centralized state wholesale distribution system for locally grown foods and to conduct a pilot project to test and refine the system. We've also funded a project with the New York Department of Agriculture and Markets in cooperation with the New York Industrial Retention Network to conduct pilot projects that demonstrate the potential for New York agricultural producers to meet demand by food processors in New York City for locally produced ingredients. So those are just a few examples of some projects that we funded just this year. If you have a project that you're interested in coming to FSMIP with, what I would suggest is approaching one of the eligible entities, the State Agriculture Department or your university, to present your project and enlist them as partners, and they would be the ones, of course, to apply and to be the administrators of the project. But that is your vehicle for getting your projects before FSMIP. So I think I'll stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janice. So I think we'll turn next to Patricia McAleer, also is with CSRES, let's see, Cooperative Research Education Extension Service. Did I get that right, Patricia?
Well, sort of right, and I'm glad to say that that huge mouthful is going to change.
Right. What is it becoming?
It's becoming the National Institutes for, I hope it's for Food and Agriculture, as of maybe next week, which is going to be a lot easier bunch of initials.
Indeed. Just to mention, as introduction, Patricia is a program specialist with Economic and Community Systems and is overseeing the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program. So I will let her tell you a bit about it.
Okay, I'm going to start with agricultural prosperity for small and medium-sized farms, because that's the way my notes are running. It's an annual program, $5 million. It's a competitive grants program. It is only open to colleges, all colleges and universities. The reason for that is Congress's decision. It's an integrated program, which means it is integrating research and extension or education and outreach. It's got to be a multifunctional program. With the major recipient would be a college, someone at a college or university, which is not to say that other groups can't partner, and in fact that's encouraged. The grants run up between $400,000 and $500,000 for 2 to 4 years. Cost share is a little convoluted. There is no one answer on cost share. It depends on the project and depends on what the money is for, so I'm not going to make a stab at that. Purpose of this program is to, I guess, encourage a greater look at the interaction of economic and environmental components in small, medium-sized farming systems to support the viability, their competitiveness, their efficiency. There's a real focus on value added. Any kind of farming pretty much is acceptable. It can be dairy, crops, forestry, whatever. The best example I can give you is one that came a year or so ago out of California, the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems. They're looking at how small or medium-sized farms can best integrate with institutions, for example, with the school systems, sending good, wholesome food to the schools. They're looking at problems there, barriers to accessing that market, like transaction costs or the problems with insurance or distribution hurdles. That's the kind of investigation this Ag Prosperity grant will fund. Another more recent one is a study coming out of Rutgers. They're looking at the ethnic vegetable market. There's a lot of new immigrants in the Northeast, and they're looking at the strength of that market, what it would take for farmers to grow the kind of produce that would be sellable to these new markets. The second program I wanted to talk about was Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program, a new one. It's just about finished its first funding cycle. It's about $17 million a year, competitive grant program again. The eligibility is much wider. It encourages a network or a partnership between government, nonprofits, universities, a very wide partnership, and very wide groups are eligible. Who is not eligible are individual producers, and in a way it's unfortunate, the title, because it looks like it's actually grants for small and beginning farmers, and it's not. It's for groups who work with beginning farmers. Cost share is 25%. This past first year we had 194 proposals. Very many of them were fundable, excellent proposals. Of course, we couldn't fund more than about 30. With the its focus on sustainability, and its purpose is helping and training new farmers, I think, again, it's a very important program for good food, getting good food out to people. One thing on this one I wanted to say, we're just about ready to start developing the RFA for this new funding cycle. And the first 2 weeks in October, we're looking for stakeholder input. We're having our own webinars, October 14th, 3 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern Time, October 15th, 9:30 in the morning Eastern Time. We've also got a call-in number. If you just plain want to talk to somebody, that would be me. Call me at 202-720-2635. I'll sit there all day, October 12th and 13th, so call me with any thoughts, and I'll write it down and pass them on. Again, you can fax us your comments again between October 1st and 15th, 202-720-6071. And again, email us with any thoughts up between the 1st and the 15th of October to bfrdp@csrees.usda.gov. That's a very quick overview. I'll be glad to take questions later.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Before I go further, I want to make sure that, Carmen, were you able to present earlier? I was not listening. I was unclear. Carmen, can anyone hear me? Yes?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay. Were you able to present earlier?
No. Can you hear me?
Yes. What, you'd like to go ahead and I'm going to introduce you, of course.
Okay, thank you.
Carmen Humphrey, my colleague, is the branch chief for marketing grants and the technical services branch at my agency, Ag Marketing Service, and where she oversees the Farmers Market Promotion Program, and she's going to tell you what it's about and how it's evolving. Thank you, Carmen.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Debbie. The Farmers Market Promotion Program is a competitive grant program that assists eligible entities in establishing, expanding, and promoting farmers markets and other direct producer-to-consumer marketing activities. Our primary objective is to improve and expand domestic farmers markets, roadside stands, community-supported agricultural programs, agritourism activities, and other direct producer-to-consumer marketing opportunities. We're authorized under the Farmer-to-Consumer Direct Marketing Act, which was recently amended by the 2008 Farm Bill, and we've been in operation for about 4 years. This year, as well as in 2010, we have $5 million available for grants. And in 2011 and 2012, we'll have $10 million available. 10% of all of the budget goes toward new EBT projects at farmers markets. That's a congressional mandate. There is no matching required, and the minimum grant and maximum grant amounts available are $2,500 and $100,000. Project lengths are up to 24 months, and those entities that are eligible are agricultural cooperatives, producer networks, producer associations, local governments, nonprofit organizations, public benefit corporations, economic development corporations, regional farmers market authorities, tribal governments. And you'll note that no individuals are eligible. And these are domestic entities, meaning those organizations that are owned and operated within one of the 50 U.S. states, including the District of Columbia. So the type of projects that we fund are, well, for example, we fund training and education, technical assistance projects for farmers, vendors, market managers, or market sponsors, and operational and management issues, including infrastructure, purchase of equipment, and other infrastructure items such as cooking, cooling, and distribution equipment. We also help entities start new farmers markets. We fund mobile markets, new CSAs, and new associations. And, of course, as our name implies, promotional materials, brochures, and advertisements. And also included in those new startups, new EBT startups, of course, under the congressional mandate, including credit debit sales and other advanced or technical assistance to start electronic transfers or electronic payments. The type of items that are not eligible under our grant are the acquisition of land or buildings, the repair, rehabilitation, or construction of buildings, and of course no political activities. Each year, including beginning in 2007, we started identifying priorities. And last year, or the 2009 grant period, because we're already ready for 2010, so it's last year for me. But in 2009, we identified 3 priorities, which were new EBT startups, growing farmers, and professional development. And the professional development is for market managers, farmers and vendors, boards and organizations, to help them in furthering their knowledge. And I think Janice will agree, we have very similar timelines. We normally announce around the January, February timeline. Janice is a lot of times a little earlier than we are. But applications are usually due for FNPP in the March, April timeline. And our review process runs from that point through the end of September, and we announce usually in September, and awards, the actual work begins October of that year. This year, I hope they have already announced awardees. If they have not, it will be tomorrow. And we will have our 2009 awardees listed. So for those of you who need a phone number for me as well, my phone number is 202-694-4000. And our catalog of federal domestic assistance number, which is the grants.gov number that you'll need, is 10.168. So you can find us there in grants.gov. So that was all I had. So if you have any other questions, please let me know. Thank you. Thanks, Debbie.
Thanks so much, Carmen. Now, Janie, are you with us today?
Not yet. She may join us later.
She may join us. Okay.
Yes.
How about Andy? Are you there?
Also not here.
Not there. Okay. Well,
Geraldine
the last
was
person on my list, and we will accommodate people as they come in and start asking some of the questions that have both flowed in as well as ones we received ahead. Geraldine, are you on the line?
She is also not on the line. I know.
Well, this just means there's more opportunity for
That's right.
our participants out in the field to learn, ask questions, and to get information which may be actually just as valuable as anything else, so no problem. Let me start with the first question that we received from Amy Telligman. She's a graduate student at the University of Colorado, and she works for the Campus Environmental Center. The center is planning a 1-acre campus garden and hopes to be operational in spring 2010. They have already received funding for capital costs. They are looking for additional funding for operational costs, especially during the first year. They plan on hiring a full-time seasonal garden manager. Our primary customer will be campus dining services. Do you know of any grant opportunities that we might qualify for? I suspect, Carmen, you may have something to say about this. Others, please feel free to chime in. Anybody want to volunteer to be first? Janice, do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, I think a project of that scale is probably not something that would be eligible for FSNP. Again, we're looking at projects that are at the state level or higher.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds like a worthy project, and it's unfortunate that some of our other people from USDA aren't here because I think they could address that. I think there may be some opportunities there. And the other thing that is not represented here today is another AMS grant program, but it's a block grant program called the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, which is money that goes to the state agriculture departments to promote specialty crops. And they do a wide range of projects. And I might suggest that you contact your state agriculture department, the Colorado State Department of Agriculture, and see if your project would be eligible under that program.
And it is unfortunate that Liz Tucker-Manny from CSRES was unable to join us today. I suspect there may be room for something like this, depending on how it's structured within the Community Food Project Grant Program at CSRES. So that certainly may be another opportunity. But this question actually begs some follow-up questions. How much of it would involve, a farm-to-institution type of arrangement? How much might involve urban gardening? Depending on the way that it's structured, it may be applicable to a number of different programs. So maybe we can follow up with Liz and others after this call and get some more substantial information to you. Well, let's follow with another question. This one is coming out of Chicago from Les Kniskern, and he mentions that he's working on a project to develop a connection between local Illinois growers and grocery-challenged urban areas of Chicago, often referred to as food deserts. This project is in the formative stage, but is in partnership with an umbrella 501c3 not-for-profit organization. Support is provided by the 501c3 not-for-profit, who will serve as fiscal agent and will also contribute to developing this project. My question is, are there USDA grant restrictions which would prohibit funding this project, as it is not an independent 501c3 organization? Or can we fund through the 501c3 parent organization? Would anybody like to chime in about the importance of 501c3 status regarding eligibility of grants?
I would just state that under the Farmers Market Promotion Program, both 501c3s in states as well as the IRS-issued 501c3 status would be eligible under FMPP. So I would just ask her specifically what it was she wanted to purchase, and then that would be able, I could, go into a little more detail as to what we could or could not cover.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Are nonprofits eligible for your programs? And if so, are there any restrictions along those lines?
This is Rob from CSRES and the SARE program. The eligibility for our programs differs by the specific call for proposals. And I think this is a fine line enough that you have to look at each individual program that the applicant would be applying to, and then ask the program manager for that specific program. Again, Liz Tucker-Matthew was mentioned with the Community Foods Program, and I think she might have the type of funding and would be able to answer that specific type of question.
Very good. Okay. We'll move on to an interesting question on meat processing facilities. Unfortunately, I don't think that Andy is available yet. Is that correct? Anyhow, let me read the question. This is from Minder Dykhouse. My son and I are working on a business case to support the establishment of a USDA-approved meat processing facility in northern Alabama in DeKalb County. Would the Value-Added Producer Grant Program be an appropriate avenue to request initial funding? Unfortunately, we don't have a representative here from Rural Development to comment. I think this may be a question that we're going to need to save till later and send to the appropriate individuals, but certainly I'm quite sure that we can get a prompt response from Andy or one of his colleagues on the VAPG program to give us a complete answer. Is anybody else? I mean, I know, Denise, you don't work with individuals, but you've done some work in the meat area on processing. Is that right?
Several years ago, we had a project in Wyoming looking at the feasibility of a mobile meat processing unit that would be used by producers within the state and actually in the region. So we do fund sometimes projects along that line. also had one several years ago in Vermont looking at the specialty meat market up there, and certainly one of the issues in this sector is the USDA slaughter facilities. It's a real problem that we understand, and so I applaud your efforts to try to get that facility there in northern Alabama, because certainly the demand for specialty meats is out there.
Right.
And but I really can't comment on that grant program. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, let's move on. There's a question here for the gentleman from SARE. Hopefully he can address. It says, this is from Jerry Unger, does SARE fund urban agriculture projects under its Sustainable Community Innovation Grants to nonprofit community organizations? Any thoughts, Rob?
I'm going to ask if Kim Kroll can help answer that. I'm not sure. I don't know all of the community innovation grants that we offer, which, again, they're only offered in the Northeast region and the Southern region.
Okay.
Kim, can you help me out there?
Yeah, I think the Southern region does put a criteria or a restriction on it that the communities have to be in rural communities. Now, the definition of what a rural community is I think, can be fairly broad. The Northeast, I'm not sure they make that restriction. So I think it can be in any community that has a link between agriculture.
Interesting. Well, I thank you very much, Kim.
Sure.
And Debbie,
yes.
I just wanted to let you know that Geraldine is now here.
Geraldine is now here. Fantastic, because she has a broad overview of many programs, so hopefully she can chime in on behalf of some of the people that haven't made it. Geraldine, let me just give a brief introduction to you, okay?
Okay.
Geraldine, for those of you who don't know, is with with the Office of Outreach and Diversity and the Office of the Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. She spent a few years here at USDA, but we won't say how many. And she certainly is very, very well acquainted on a broad scale with the entire spectrum of financial assistance programs that exist in the department and continue to evolve and change over time. And she also helps organize certainly an annual meeting with community-based organizations and other partners to make sure that information such as the information we're sharing today is conveyed to a wide variety of grassroots organizations. So without further ado, Geraldine, I'll turn it over to you to talk a little bit about your function at the department.
Well, I am in the Office of Outreach and Diversity, as Deb said, and we provide training and technical assistance to community-based organizations in rural communities and low-income individuals. We also provide information on and coordinate most of the grant programs and other programs that the USDA agencies implement. And we send out information on these programs as they are updated or as new ones become available to keep everybody up with what's going on. And as they come out, we also introduce them to some of the criteria and some of the the qualifications that are needed. If they can't qualify for the program right away, we work with them until they can or they have the capacity to apply for grant programs. One of the things also that I will be talking about is a new initiative from the Secretary, which is called Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food Initiative. Yeah, I can just, it's an initiative to connect consumers with local producers to create new economic opportunities for communities and to begin a national conversation to help develop local and regional food systems and spur economic opportunity to these communities. And right now, we do have a YouTube channel, which is www.USDA youtube.com/USDA. Also, you can provide comments on this initiative to another website, which is an email address, which is knowyourfarmer@usda.gov. And also, the Secretary announced $230,000 in funding for studies to assess the capacity. And this money right now is just going to the northeastern U.S. to produce enough food locally to meet market demands, rather than relying on food transported long distance to feed the East Coast population. And these studies will be conducted as part of the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative to connect people more closely with the farmers who supply their food and to increase the production, marketing, and consumption of fresh, nutritious food that is grown locally in a sustainable manner. And also, you can get more information on that on the website for USDA, which is www.usda.gov. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. Well, we have quite a few questions that are flowing in, and they really vary, so I'm looking forward to sharing these with you. Very quickly, this one is for Patricia. Can you tell us when the 2009 recipients of the Ag Prosperity grants for small and medium producers will be announced?
They mean the Ag Prosperity and not Beginning Farmers, because
they mean the Ag Prosperity.
Yeah, I thought that they had been announced, and I thought they had been announced.
All right.
I need to get back on that. I'm sorry about that. I can tell you Beginning Farmers are almost announced, not quite, because it has to go through the department processes. I will get back and find out. I thought Ag Prosperity was announced. Sorry.
Okay. And of course, you know, the staff at Wallace can make sure you have the name of this individual and, you know, can touch base with him. There's a question also, Patricia, about the Beginning Farmer and Rancher program. There was Bahia Berry is asking, could you tell us more about the Beginning Farmer and Rancher Development Program? What kind of organizations and institutions can apply for funds? And in particular, what types of training programs can the funds be used for? And is it possible for a 501c3 to apply?
Just about anybody can apply. The eligibility is extremely wide, deliberately very wide, and no reason why. The first batch that came in, nearly 194 proposals, covered a huge range of groups sending in. I know of no group that is not eligible. What's more important, and that includes the 501c3s, more important though is that they should be focusing on partnerships and collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
The only really strict thing I can tell you is that individuals cannot apply. Farmers cannot apply. It is not grants for individuals. It's grants for groups or groupings who work with beginning farmers and ranchers. I'm going to give you a similar, very, very wide-ranging answer on the types of projects. Pretty much right now, the sky is the limit. The Congress set up something like 18 or 19 topics that they found that they thought were worthy of being covered, and I think the 19th topic was anything else that is reasonable. So in terms of what pretty much any group would think is a useful thing to transmit to beginning farmers and ranchers is likely to be eligible.
And I think it's important for any of you who are interested in any of these grant programs to really take a look at the websites that are associated with all of them. You'll find a lot of rich information, not just typically the awards that are announced, but in some cases the final reports to the agency from a number of grants. So you get a real taste of the type of projects that tend to be awarded grants, the kind of emphasis that the reviewers are looking for. And I'm not sure we've mentioned that yet, but I think it's really instrumental that you do your homework And you may be surprised that sometimes, I'll give you one example, and Carmen, you can chime in if you want, but many people ask me and Carmen, farmers market promotion program, do you have to be a farmers market to apply? Carmen, you want to comment on that?
We do have a broad range of eligible entities and even broader range of topics that can be ideas and projects that can be paid for under the grant program. So I think you're right. I think we should all provide a website, and I'll give you ours. It is under FMPP, www.a as in Apple, M as in Michael, S as in Sam, ams.usda.gov/FMPP.
Thank you very much, Carmen. This is a nice segue into one question we have from Beth Ann Lewandowski. And she says, who can provide funding for a distribution hub? And while she doesn't elaborate here, I assume she means a place where smaller scale growers, producers can consolidate their supplies so that they can, so that product can be repacked and then delivered to larger scale, maybe food service, restaurant, retail buyers. Would anybody like to comment about how their programs might provide funding for such a distribution hub arrangement? Janice, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, one of the projects that I mentioned that we just funded was with the state of Maine, the Maine Department of Agriculture, Food, and Rural Resources, to develop this business plan and financial model for a centralized state wholesale distribution system. So looking statewide, we probably would not necessarily entertain a smaller scale project than that, but if there were some innovative aspects to it or particular challenges or opportunities there, we might, but again, that would have to go through your state agriculture department.
Thank you very much, Janice. I think this is also a nice segue into a question we received here from Colleen Donovan. Which of the USDA grant programs are a good fit for farm-to-school initiatives, specifically to help address distribution challenges? I know that certainly the Federal State Marketing Improvement Program historically has provided some funding in that direction, and perhaps, Janice, you can comment on that. Also, Carmen, I know that to some degree, when it involves farmers markets on campuses, we have some involvement in FMPP, and there may be others on this call who also can speak to farm to school, which of course we know that the administration and the senior officials at the department are very concerned about, and just announced the new tactical team at the departmental level to examine some of these distribution challenges so that we can move the farm to school initiative forward. So Janice, would you like to start?
Sure. We've funded a number of projects over the years relating to farm-to-school projects. In 2001, which was the first year I was here, we funded a project in New Mexico focusing on the Santa Fe area. We, since then, have funded, just off the top of my head, projects in Connecticut, I think in 2003 or 4, and that was a statewide project to essentially link producers with opportunities to supply food to schools. And again, it was a statewide initiative by the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. We just have a project finishing up with the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, again, a statewide assessment of different models of distribution from farms to schools. And you've got, I haven't seen the final report yet, so I don't know the results, but they've looked at the state situation and said there are different distribution models that can work in different situations, and you have different scales of distribution. And so what they've done is document those models, and will be providing a report with lessons learned about how these things work under these different situations. We've also had a project in Oregon, a two-tiered project that dealt with developing specific process-type products for schools. and that'll be finishing up pretty soon. So FSMIP certainly is a source of funding for that, but again, we want projects that are sort of a bigger scale and that have some type of a research component to it. We're not going to fund just to set it up. We need lessons learned from it. And so that's a possibility. I would say work with your state ag department on that.
And this is Patricia. I'd like to go back also to ag prosperity. The example from California these are integrated projects. It's not a straight research project. It's looking at bottlenecks and looking at outreach methods of reaching populations. $400,000 or $500,000 is a hefty grant. So again, it's probably quite a large scale. And like I said earlier, the PI on these grants has to come through the universities, but partnerships are very important, and you get many brownie points if you're actually partnering with other groups. Also, your point, Debbie, on checking what's been funded on the website is I wish I thought to say that. And I hate to tell people to go to our website, www.csrees.usda.gov, but it will change. If you look at the particular grants, if you go to what used to be called the NRI grant, it will give you examples of what has been funded, and it will give you examples of what was funded under agricultural prosperity. It's not called NRI right anymore, but there are similar proposals, and it will show you.
That's right. It's called. What is it called? AFRI. AFRI?
AFRI, but if you go under AFRI, because this is AFRI's first full year, yes, there are no samples of previous funded projects, but you'll find them under NRI.
Excellent. And having been a previous reviewer on the ag prosperity for small and medium-sized farms, I just want to also emphasize the truth of what Patricia said earlier about the range of activities that do qualify for funds under that program. And certainly, I think often people censor themselves a bit too much before they even look into some of these grant programs. They make presumptions about the scope of work that is eligible, and sometimes those don't stand up to scrutiny. So I think it's important, again, to do one's research. And with that, Patricia, I have a question I think I'd like you to take a stab at. And I think perhaps Carmen and others. From Nancy Bentley, when a project addresses, meets objectives, or qualifies for priorities of more than one multiple agencies, say economics, community development, health, nutrition, and sustainable benefits, are there any mechanisms within USDA, or do you have any suggestions for collaborative approaches or matrixing project applications, or would an applicant simply have to submit separate applications to the different programs? And of course, Patricia, I immediately thought about what resonated to me was your emphasis on integrated programs. And I thought, in many ways, if you could just elaborate on that a little bit more, and I certainly know that within our shop at AMS, we have priorities that really span the gamut in terms of looking at the entire food system, and often want to see multiple priorities incorporated into a single proposal. So I know that's true of SNPP, and I suspect it's true as well many times of FSMIP. But Patricia, do you have any comments on that?
If I'm understanding the question, the integrated project for us means an integration of research or extension or education, an integration of the type of work that's going to be done within a project. And nowadays we're increasing the amount of what used to be called applied research, and outreach growing out of the applied research is one example of what we mean by integrated. Mm-hmm. We also really increasingly favor projects that are co-hosted, if you will, by more than one organization and type of organization. Neither of those answers the question, though. And
right. This is more, I guess, but it's an but thank you for talking.
I had one more point, which isn't such a happy point, but generally our funds, there are different funding lines coming out of Congress, and they sometimes get very close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the agencies are obliged to follow a particular funding line and cannot merge those pots of money. That may be, it may be a very sensible thing to do, but we're not allowed to do that. And that might be a partial answer to the question.
Yeah, I think you hit it, Patricia. The other thing, it sounds like the person is wondering if they have to submit several applications to several different agencies for maybe a project that covers the gamut of all of our agency endeavors.
That's right.
And the answer to that, unfortunately, is yes.
That's right.
There is a concern, of course, about what we call double dipping. A project cannot be funded by more than one federal agency. So I would recommend possibly that the person identify the stages of that application, and in the application that they may be sending to more than one agency to identify, I have requested that FSMIP fund this portion, CSREES fund this stage, and FMPP fund this stage, so that there's no possible federal charges that could be implied for that person to be funded more than once.
Yes, and it's also on the documentation you're obliged to send in through that fund group, grants.gov. You
Exactly.
are obliged to check off boxes to say that you are not, that's not the technical term, but you're not trying to double dip either.
Exactly.
But another point on that particular question, though, I think it's always a very good idea to talk to the specific program director, because you can get very good advice from, say, my boss, Suresh, when you're applying to Ag Prosperity and you're hankering also to some of the items that fit a similar funding line. If you talk to someone like Suresh, you might get a much better idea of which would be the more valid funding line to go for.
Thank you. I heard someone else trying to chime in here about the issue of interdisciplinary projects.
This was Rob of the SARE program, and I think a general piece of advice for grant applicants is to tailor their proposals very specifically to the call for proposals. And so breaking up a project into multiple pieces and then having those pieces tailored specifically to the call that comes out for a specific program is really, I think, your best avenue for success. When a grant comes into the SARE program, it has to be compared, or compete against other proposals for that very same project. And if it doesn't match the criteria of that grant program, then it's not going to compete as well.
Thank you. I think several of us are saying amen to your comment, Rob.
Yes.
Those of us that have been in and around the grant world to some degree, and I think you summarized it very, very well. Again, it's attention to doing your homework, making sure you understand the mission of the agency, the mandate of the program, the priorities of any particular year. So I thank you for emphasizing that point. A simple question, probably involving the SARE folks here. From Colleen Donovan, are individual producers eligible to apply directly for any USDA grant programs?
That, I think, is, this is Rob again, and also I failed to mention earlier that Kim Kroll, who is with us, is also the Associate Director for the SARE program located at the University of Maryland, and so I've asked him to chime in from time to time when he has additional information. But the SARE program is very much a strong part of our program is getting innovative ideas from farmers and ranchers, and so each of our regions does offer farmer and rancher research and education grants. So please look closely at that, and I think they've been some of them have been very, very successful over the years.
I think to add on to what Rob said, though, is the applicants have to realize that the funds that they get will be used for doing research and demonstration type activities. They can't be used for, in many cases, buildings. There is a level of funding for equipment and things like that. And it's also to help pay for their time when they're trying something innovative.
Very good. Thank you. Just looking to see what else has come up here. There are some more questions here about the Know Your Farmer initiative from Adam Lackman. As a follow-up to Geraldine's statement on the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative, what is the involvement of public schools in the funding of this program? Specifically, are there any restrictions on funding school lunch programs as a site for drawing the connections between local food, the economy, and public health? What is the view of collaborations between public schools and grant recipients of this initiative? I think in many ways, and I understand that Geraldine has actually left us for the day, I think the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative certainly embraces a larger group than we have represented here on our panel. In many ways, on the Farm to School initiative, since I am somewhat involved with it, it's really our food and nutrition service group that is taking the lead on much of the work. And I think the intention is right now, as was mentioned in the press release this week about the tactical team, to work with some of the nonprofits that have done some groundbreaking work in this area, thoroughly examine where the problems are, and then start figuring out how we can use that information to really make important decisions on how future resources get allocated. So I suspect it's a little premature to start talking about what is the impact of the initiative that's just in the process of being rolled out. Janice has commented before, and others, that we do have some existing funding that has supported farm-to-school marketing initiatives. I know that certainly in the federal state marketing improvement program, I would suspect there's a good half dozen or more farm-to-school projects that have been funded in recent years. And I'd instruct any of you to take a look at that and see what is it about those programs that seem to comport with the requirements of the federal state marketing improvement program. And I don't know, Janice, do you have any sense on the specialty crop block grants, whether they're doing any work on farm-to-school?
I really don't know. I would suspect so.
Right.
Because it is a priority with a lot of states, but I don't know.
Thank you. Okay, let me see what else we can...
Deborah, I'm back. Did you have a question?
Oh, well, the question was, and maybe you do have a view of it, Geraldine. I'm glad to hear you're back. There was a question here about Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food.
Right.
And it really was saying, what is the involvement, of how is this going to affect funding available to public schools and farm-to-school programs? And I, in your absence, talked about the press release this week about, the tactical teams, and mentioned that certainly the Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food projects are still in the process of evolving. But maybe from your broad perspective at USDA, Geraldine, you could give us a sense of where you see some support coming from, especially on the funding side, for moving forward with the Farm to School initiative that's such a high priority in the department?
Yes, it is, and I see that affecting it quite a bit in the support, more support for that Farm to School. They're already working on several initiatives because they want a lot of people to buy local. What they have done, and I don't know if anyone talked about it, is, and I guess I don't know if people are interested in loans, but in rural development, they've made it easier for people to get loan guarantees to set up to buy locally. It's a new program that the 2008 Farm Bill mandated that happened. And then you talked about the specialty crop. That's something that's very important to this administration, so I think they're going to be working on that too. They haven't announced a whole lot about it yet because I think they're still working on it, but that all of this will come forward, and I can get more information so to give it to you to respond to the one who has the question about that information.
Great. So what we'll do, Geraldine, is certainly Wallace is coordinating a number of these questions. So after the webinar, we'll make sure to connect the dots and get it as much information as we can to the appropriate individuals.
Okay.
Let me move on and ask a couple of questions. I know we're running a bit short on time here, and there's some great questions that have just come up. And this one is for all the panelists. It says, how do you anticipate that your programs will evolve, given the changing priorities of your agency? Will these changes be evident in the request for proposals for 2010? Who would like to take that first?
This is Patricia. I'd like to go back to not so much the changes in my agency, but again, make a plug for people to take part in stakeholder input for a couple of weeks in October, because that will help the evolution of the RFA for beginning farmers and ranchers.
And also this Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative, as I say, they have information on the YouTube, and I gave that address, and also where you can send comments. And I think that any comments that they receive will be helpful because this is a new initiative. So they're looking for additional information. So how they connect that farm to table might really, spur some other kind of initiative. So I would say really participate in that.
This is Janice Zigmont with FSMIP, and we're in the process of developing our RFP for 2010 and having discussions with the new administration. So there is a possibility of some changes there with FSMIP, but I have nothing specific for you right now.
Thank you, Janice. Would anybody else like to comment about how they see things evolving, or maybe just a continuation of the same?
This is Rob, and I think in reality the SARE program has been fairly well aligned historically with the current agency and administration objectives. One thing that I see may be evolving is a little bit more focused on, quote, ag in the middle, and some of the mid-sized farms, and somewhat in response to the NAF Census of Agriculture, where we see a decline in the number of mid-sized farms. But that's very much speaking in generalities.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
This is Carmen. The only thing I would mention under FNPP is that we often identify priorities, and those change from year to year. So I would ask anyone that's applying in 2010 to make sure that you look at that, because there may be some changes in the near future.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm going to move to a question that, Carmen, I got a question for you.
Okay.
And it says, would AMS FNPP be the best fit for this type of project? This is Randy Stannard, I work with a 501c3 nonprofit in Sacramento, California, that would like to find funding for a project that will help connect smaller local growers, many of whom that are low-income minority farmers, to local food distribution companies that serve school districts. Would this be an FNPP-type project, or is this something that would fit elsewhere? Does anybody have any? Carmen, would you like to start, and see if anyone else has some comments?
I would say yes. She could definitely explore FNPP. Of course, I'd love to have a little more details about what she'd want the grant funds to go toward, and then that would allow me to give her more information. But yes, definitely explore us as an option.
Excellent. Janice, you have?
Well, my only comment is that the nonprofit is not eligible for the Federal State Marketing Improvement Program, but you could be a partner in a project, so I'd suggest get in touch with your state agriculture department and work with them for a possible submission.
And Patricia, I think, this is Patricia, I think maybe talk to Liz Tuckermanti. I really don't know enough about her program, but talk to her about this too.
Thank you, Patricia. I understand we have a number of people that have their hands raised in the chat room, and I'm not able to actually access your questions. So if you would be kind enough to type your questions, I'll be happy to share them with the group before we wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so. And while I think I've covered most of the questions that we've received thus far, just wanted to know if there were any comments from the panelists, anything else that's come up that they would like to share with the group that they feel is essential for people to know that may be new to this process. Do you have any particular tips?
This is Janice Egmont with FSMIP again, and I neglected to tell you that we are looking at 2010, and I wanted to tell you what our calendar is expected to be. Our RFP should go out sometime late fall. We expect a mid-February application deadline. We will usually announce the results, the awards, in July, and projects would start September 1. So we've just started our 2009 projects off, and as I mentioned before, I'm working on the RFP. I would like to just echo some of the comments of the other panelists about the importance of looking very carefully at what the RFP says and tailor your project to that. If you're not an eligible entity, don't waste your time, because you will not be able to get a project through that grant program. Make sure that you read the objectives of the program and very carefully follow the guidelines for preparing an application. And I would just say, once you have an application prepared, give it to someone who is not so close to your project. Have them review it and ask them, does this make sense to you? Because you need to keep in mind that there are reviewers who are going to be looking at your proposal, and they will only be judging that proposal as to what's on that page, what's on that paper. So it's very important to read the RFP carefully and prepare accordingly.
Thank you, Janice. Anybody else care to comment on that? And I know we've covered a lot of territory in this direction, but any lasting tips and advice you'd like to give to applicants?
Yes, Deb, this is Geraldine. One tip is that they should look on the USDA website and get some information about the agency that is doing the solicitation, and look at what their priorities are as reference to the program. Also, some of the new grantees that are just submitting, I would suggest that you talk to someone who has already submitted a grant or been successful. You can find that information on the website. You can also get information on some of the projects that they have been funded for, and that'll give you an idea about some of the things that you can get some funds for. Also, know your community. If you're going to be getting some funds for a particular community or particular subject, know your subject well and collaborate. That's very important, that you collaborate with other groups or other organizations that's in your area. But know your subject and some of the things that you know you want to do and your outcomes. What are some of the outcomes that you want to see happen? And also be able to show that you can sustain that project after the funds have been exhausted. Thank you.
That's a very good point. You know, as an ending note here, before I turn it over to the Wallace staff to close, Geraldine, maybe this is a good place to plug some of the work I know that you've been doing with other folks in the department to try to piece together some advice for prospective applicants to USDA grant programs and some of the activities that the seminars you've given around the country, even with some of our staff, and helping people with grant writing and grant preparation. Would you like to comment about that a little, or how you see that unfolding?
Well, I see that because of the availability, there's a whole lot more funds because of the 2008 Farm Bill. We'll be getting more money, and also for the American Recovery Act. So we will continue to do the grant writing workshops around the country. They can request it. The person to work with is Dennis Abadagi, and he's in Cooperative Research and Extension Service, CSREES, but now it's going to be the National Food and Agriculture, NIFA, and that's as of October 1. And I will give his information out. He is the team leader for this effort, and what we do is we have different people from the USDA agencies who are actually the program managers. So you actually get to talk to the ones who have the grants, who can get information to you and talk about some of the things that you will need in order to be eligible and to meet the criteria. As I said, we will work with people. There are a lot of people that have applied for grants many times, but we encourage them not to give up. We also do interactive one-on-one training, and we encourage people to bring in their proposals if they have not been successful, so we can go over some of the information to give them some tips on some of the things that they can do. But partnership is very important, to work with someone who is doing the same thing that you're doing, especially if you're new to a particular area. But always know your subject, know your community, and get the support from the community in order to do your project. Thanks. Pat wants to say something. Yes?
And I hate to end up on a gloomy note, but I think it's important to remember that many agencies are required and are requiring proposals to be submitted through grants.gov, and it's not a fun process, and it's something registering through grants.gov. We were talking about that at a meeting yesterday. Just do it anyway, even if you don't have a proposal. Get that out of the way, because it can take a couple of months, and practice submitting through grants.gov. Once you get used to it, it's not nearly as bad as you thought, but it takes some getting used to. And you really want to get that skill under your belt, separate to having to developing a good proposal. Sorry to bring that up.
If you hadn't, Pat, I was going to. It's very, very important. Start early, because the grants.gov process is time-consuming, and we want you to be successful in accessing our programs.
And not only that, there are some people who do accept the proposals. If you get in touch with them and you have problems submitting it by grants.gov, if you can submit information or documentation that you have tried, they will work with you. Some will even accept CDs or other forms, as long as the document is in PDF and comes electronic. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your excellent observations on helping people to make their proposals more attractive. And I think at this time it's time to turn this over back to Marty and Jeff. To end the webinar, I want to thank all of our participants today, Carmen, Janice, Rob, Patricia, Geraldine. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your really busy schedules, and I know many of you are in the middle of a conference, so I really appreciate you taking the time to call from hither and yon and making sure that people get the information they need. And thank you, everybody at Wallace, for giving me this opportunity and creating this opportunity for our constituents. So thanks again.
Thank you, Debbie. This is Marty Gerenster with the Good Food Network at Wallace. Again, we want to thank our partners and co-hosts, all of the folks at USDA, and a special thanks to Jeff and Beth from Wallace and Jim Barham from USDA. They coordinated upwards of a dozen people. We're in locations all over the country. The USDA folks are very busy, and so we hope we gave you a lot of good information through this webinar. This is one way we're working in partnership with USDA. Again, I think you probably heard a theme hopefully throughout the webinar, that there's value in working in partnerships and scaling up this good food and moving these regional food systems forward. So we hope that the Good Food Network and the folks at USDA can help share ways to work in partnership, and we certainly have enjoyed working with a lot of you that are on the call today. Thank you for staying with us for 90 minutes. There still are a number of you on the call. Again, just quickly, another way to find out about work going on within the Good Food Network, USDA initiatives, is through our e-newsletter. Go to ngfn.org. Follow us on Twitter. We've been on Twitter now a couple weeks, and we've had a number of things from USDA to post for your information if you're not getting that. The recording of this webinar will be available within the next week and will be posted on ngfn.org. So stay in touch with us. We'll do everything we can to try to get you connected to people, resources, funding, opportunities so that you can do your work in your regions. The next webinar is October 15th, always the third Thursday of the month, always 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and it's always posted on our website. But October 15th, 3:30 p.m. Eastern on food safety. We're doing some coordination work through the network on food safety. There obviously are several other national organizations that we're looking to do partnering with. They will be on the call with us to give some updates from many different perspectives. So again, that's October 15th. If you would, please fill out the survey as you leave the webinar. It's important to us to know how to best serve you and we continue to make changes to the webinar to make it more user-friendly. We added phone capability. We're adding things based on your input, so it's really important that we hear from you. And again, we hope we see you next month, and please visit our website for more information in the next month. Thank you all.